my charmed ones, and welcome back to my channel for another video. And if this is your first time with me, I'd like to say welcome. My name is Alexis, but I'm also known as MissTrenchcoat all across the internet. I'm an online entrepreneur who helps ambitious women plan for a balanced life and business using my CEO strategy and master plan methods. So if that sounds interesting to you, I welcome you to check out the links in the description of this video for where you can see more of my work online, and feel free to visit my shop, thecharmedshop.com, for my latest and greatest resources, classes, and tools on productivity, planning, and business. So today's video, I am talking about 7 limiting beliefs that are stopping you from getting things done. Now, if you're not familiar with what a limiting belief is, essentially this is a belief or story that's part of our mindset, which means that it's part of our worldview, the way that we approach and interact with the world, the way that we believe the world works. And oftentimes these limiting beliefs, these stories, are things that we either learned in childhood or picked up from our parents, our family, our community, or like the demographic that we lived in as we were growing up. So a lot of times the way that we think about and approach the world very often reflects our parents or our family's values, or at least that local, community or that society that we were part of are often very strongly influencing our worldview, the way we look at the world and approach the world. Now, unfortunately, what ends up happening in some situations is that we learn things about the world from our early childhood experience that aren't always true. And these things end up becoming stereotypes that we end up using in our mindset to hold us back from getting things done. So it's very important that if we have these sorts of limiting beliefs, that we actually identify them and work on actually overcoming them, especially in instances where we've set ourselves like goals, or we've made plans, where there's like some form of success that we're looking to achieve in life and we haven't gotten there yet. And we keep feeling like we have hit like a limit, or we hit a wall, right? With like how much we can do. We feel like we keep maybe running in circles and just hitting the same obstacles over and over again. This is incredibly common. And it usually is an indication that we have some sort of limiting belief. So what I've been doing, I love the topic of limiting beliefs and I love the topic of mindset because I think that once you identify and overcome your limiting beliefs and you really work on your mindset, that really the sky is the limit for you, right? Anything that's possible on God's green earth is possible for you once you have addressed and overcome limiting beliefs and really start working on your mindset and making sure that you believe that anything that you put your mind to, you can achieve, right? So I have been essentially assembling, right, the most common limiting beliefs that I often find, or that my followers, my audience members, my students will come to me and tell me, oh, I'm having an issue with this. So I've been kind of like collecting these limiting beliefs, and I've organized them into 7. And we're going to go ahead right now, and I am going to walk you through each limiting belief, a common way that you can identify if this limiting belief is something that is negatively impacting your life. And then I've got some affirmations, some mindset work that we can actually do to address the specific limiting belief that we've got. Okay, so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. Okay, so what are those 7 common limiting beliefs that are holding you back from getting things done? Let's go ahead and break them down one by one. So the first limiting belief is what I'm going to call ignorance. And I don't want to offend anyone with the terminology I'm using. I was just looking for the best way to describe some of these limiting beliefs. Some of them already have their own terminology associated with them, but in other instances, and this is one of the instances, I just had to come up with something to call it, like a title to give it, that embodied what the limiting belief was all about. So excuse me if this is triggering for you. If it is triggering for you, it may mean that this limiting belief is something you might want to work on, but I'm just trying to do the best with what I know. And so limiting belief number 1 is ignorance. So ignorance is when we believe we don't know enough, we don't have the right skills or information to accomplish something, right? So you may recognize if this is an issue in your life if you use the following excuse repeatedly, okay? Which is, I don't know how to do that. So, how often have you approached your work, either your own goals, your own plans, or even something maybe at work or something someone else was asking you to do, and you said, I don't know how to do that? Now, if this is something that you find yourself saying repeatedly, like maybe a crutch that you're leaning on, this could be a sign that you are struggling with the limiting belief of ignorance. Now, what can we do to overcome this limiting belief? The only thing to do when it comes to overcoming limiting beliefs is to actually reprogram them, right? So there's a story in your head that you are telling yourself, I don't know how to do that. I don't have that skill. I don't know how to do it. I can't do it because I don't know how to do it, right? Now, what we're going to do is use an affirmation. So I recommend that you use this affirmation, give it a try. I recommend repeating this to yourself, especially in situations where you want to say the excuse of, I don't know how to do that. Instead, I want you to start remembering this affirmation, writing it down, saying it out loud instead when you bump up to this limiting belief of ignorance. So this affirmation is, I am willing to learn what I don't yet know to accomplish my task. Right? Because we realize, I think we all understand, like logically, no one knows how to do everything, right? But you know who does? Google, right? So I think that there's a lot of information out there. It's very easy for us to like find the answers, find information, get skills that we're looking for very often are at our fingertips, right at our computers or on our smartphones, right? But we logically, when we come up against the problem of we don't know something, some people have that limiting belief where they feel like they don't know something, they don't have the information or skills, so they just give up. I don't want you to give up, right? We all have access to a wide variety of information out there. I want you to start thinking in terms of that you're willing to learn what you don't know, right? Because that's the mindset of someone who is on a personal growth path, someone who is successful, someone who's not going to let obstacles stand in their way. I am willing to learn what I don't know to accomplish my task. Try that affirmation and let me know in the comments if this limiting belief is yours. And feel free for the rest of this as well. I don't want to keep repeating myself. If you identify with any of these limiting beliefs, I want you to leave it in the comments when you see the ones that ring true for you and what you're going to work on. Leave me that comment and we'll do a little accountability in the comments of this video. Okay? So this is number 1, ignorance. Number 2, scarcity. So this is a scarcity limiting belief or a scarcity mindset. So scarcity is when we believe we don't have enough of something or a specific resource in order to get our work done. So here is the common excuse that you will hear when someone has a scarcity belief in the way. I don't have enough X. And that X could be time, money, energy, experience. Do you find yourself relying on an excuse like this as to why you can't go after your goals, do your work, right? Why you can't achieve? Oh, I don't have enough of something, right? If that's you, I want you, anytime you go to say that excuse, use that excuse to try this affirmation instead. I can always find a way to get things done because it's true. I think there is this, obviously for someone who has this scarcity mindset, you believe that you need something outside of yourself to get something done, right? You need time to start a business. You need money to start a business. You need, energy or certain experience to go after some job or some goal or some outcome that you're looking to produce in your life. And while that might be true in some instances, it doesn't have to be true in every instance. And I believe in human ingenuity, and I believe in your ingenuity, that if you believe that you can find a way to get things done, you will make something happen, no matter what time you have or what money you have or what money you have or what experience you have. You are capable of actually getting things done to a much greater degree than you believe. And I'll say specifically on the time situation, we all have the same 24 hours in a day. I know that sometimes that is a triggering phrase for people, but the way I think of that is that you have a certain amount of time in your day to decide how you're going to use that time, right? So if you want to prioritize something, if something is important enough to you, you will make the time. You will carve that time out in your schedule to make sure you get it done. So you can always find a way. You can always find the time. You can always find the resources. You can always find help somewhere. You can always gain experience. And I can always find a way to get things done. That's your affirmation if this is your limiting belief. Next one, number 3, is perfectionism. So I've been talking a little bit about perfectionism over on my Instagram recently. So if you have not been following me on Instagram, or maybe you have been following me, but you're one of like the thousands upon thousands of people that who's following me, but never sees my content anymore. Go ahead and check me out. I'm at MissTrenchcoat. Go ahead on Instagram and just go ahead and like some of my pictures, and hopefully that'll tell the algorithm that you want to start seeing my feed, because I've been producing some really thought-provoking content over on Instagram recently. So yes, go check out my Instagram for more on perfectionism. So I know that this is a big one for a lot of you. So perfectionism is when we think things need to be perfect in order to do the work. So this could mean that we think that circumstances need to be perfect in order to get work done, or that we need to be perfect, or that the result that we produce needs to be perfect in order to be worthy, right? Which is absolutely overwhelming, because logically speaking, we know that perfection does not exist, right? So this could be your limiting belief. If you use this excuse, I can't do it unless I make it perfect. If you're like, oh, I just want it to be perfect, right? If that is something you hear yourself saying a lot, and you're not already aware of your perfectionist tendencies, then you might have a limiting belief around perfectionism. What are we going to say? Well, how are we going to rewrite this one? With an affirmation: I am enough. My effort and intention are enough. Because I truly believe that there's no such thing as perfect. So you're never going to have the perfect situation to start on your goal or whatever project that you've been pushing off. You're never going to get perfect results from whatever you're working on, whatever work you're doing that you're afraid to do or afraid to put out in the world. I think I see this a lot with women who work outside the home or want to run a business. They think that things need to be perfect in order to get started, in order to put their thoughts and ideas out into the world. It is absolutely not true. You are inherently enough already. You are worthy already as you are right now, as you've been made, and you are sitting here watching this right now. You right now are worthy and you are enough. And your intention in your work and the effort that you put into your work is enough for it to be worthy as well. So keep that in mind. Anytime you try to use the excuse of perfectionism, tell yourself, I am enough. My effort and intention are enough, because you are. Next limiting belief, imposter syndrome. Maybe you've heard this before. This is another one of those buzz terms that's out there that we talk about when we talk about mindset. So imposter syndrome is when you do not believe that you are good enough or have the right qualifications to do a task. Often, this is very important, often despite significant evidence to the contrary, okay? So this is a issue that I see a lot of people have. I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant right now. Specifically, I think this is an issue that, although anyone could have this issue, I feel that women have it a lot. And anyone who is like a minority, a person of color, a group that's been discriminated against institutionally. And the reason I think that those groups struggle the most with this is because we live in a society. I mean, I'm talking about like America, North America here, where I'm from, right? Where if you aren't like a white man and you're in the workplace, you have probably been to some degree discriminated against, whether you know it or not, institutionally, right? Because there was a very long time where they were really pushing, right? Society was really pushing for women to stay at home, and they didn't want minorities in the workforce, right? They didn't want any people of color or anyone who identified as anything other than a white man to be working at a company, right? So, or in a business or anything like that. So we are kind of in a society that if you feel like you don't belong, it's because there is an underlying current of that feeling that still exists, right? Yes, we've come a long way. Women are allowed to work in the workforce. We still don't make as much as men. Same thing goes for people of color or other, minority groups. But it's not uncommon. So number one, if you suffer with this one, there's a reason. There's a really strong reason. But that does not mean that you do not have the qualifications, that you do not belong in a certain role, in a certain job, working on a certain task. Because like I said earlier, a lot of people that have this issue of imposter syndrome, a lot of times it's professional people who've gone to school for something. Like you've worked for years to be a lawyer or a doctor, or a therapist or something, and you feel like you're not enough, you're not worthy, right? Now, of course, this can also happen to people who are maybe like me, who are more entrepreneurial, who are people who are trying to start a business from nothing, who don't necessarily have like some degree in business that like gives them permission to do what they're doing, right? Like I have a degree, I have a bachelor's degree, but I don't have a business degree. So if you're saying like, oh, Alexis, what right do you have to run a business? Well, what right do I have not to run a business if I'm capable of doing it and I have something to say and I have something of value to offer the world, right? So you may have imposter syndrome, and maybe you didn't know it was called imposter syndrome if you use the excuse, who am I to do that, right? So if you have a goal, you have a desire, but you think to yourself, who am I to achieve that? Who am I to start a business? Who am I to write a book? Who am I, to go for the VP role in my company, right? Who am I to do that? Well, who are you not to do that? Try this affirmation. If anyone is capable of this, it is me. If anyone is capable of this, it is me. It is you. You are capable. You are a smart, strong, capable woman, and you're prepared to get shit done. That's like my favorite mantra. So if you struggle with imposter syndrome, let me know. Work on this affirmation, right? To overcome that limiting belief. Because you are worthy, you are enough, you have the qualifications, and your desire is oftentimes enough of a reason to propel yourself into a certain calling that you might have for your life. Don't let yourself miss out on what you're meant to do or made for in this world. Follow that desire. You can learn anything that you might not, know right now, any skills that you might need. You can always learn them, right? You're capable of learning anything that you need, right? We already talked about that in Limiting Belief 1. So, imposter syndrome, let's kick that to the curb, okay? Next, limiting belief is what I'm calling reactive thinking. There wasn't like a great term for this one either, so I'm calling it reactive thinking because to me it's the opposite of responsive thinking. So reactive thinking is when you have taken on too much work to handle and you become overwhelmed from a failure to prioritize. So this might be a limiting belief plaguing you if you use the excuse that I have too much going on to do this new thing, right? Or like I have this goal, but I have too much going on in my life to take this on. I just have too much. Now, what's going on in this situation is that you may have a very full life in other areas, but realistically speaking, you are automatically becoming reactive and saying no or putting up a wall instead of what you should really be doing is thinking about the big picture of what you have and prioritizing what's important to you and then making time for the thing that's important to you. So if you struggle, you think with this reactive thinking, try the affirmation, I take the time to see the big picture so I can choose what to respond to wisely, right? Many of us have competing priorities, a lot of things going on in our lives that we have to balance. And in order to find balance, the trick is you have to actually choose the things that are important and spend your time there, right? And I never want you to approach your work, your life from a reactive standpoint, which means that something happens and you feel the need to immediately jump in without thinking, and you feel the need to act, right? Something happens, you react. I want you to start becoming responsive, right? Where something happens, and instead of immediately taking action, you pause. You evaluate your priorities, you evaluate the big picture and say, what's the best thing for me to do in this situation? A lot of us are just kind of automatically trained to take action, to solve people's problems, fix an issue, right? I don't want you to react. I want you to become responsive. This is actually a very important mindfulness practice. I also talked about this recently on Instagram as well. Many reasons you should be going over there and reading my posts because they're very full of information. So try this affirmation. I take the time to see the big picture so I can choose what to respond to wisely. Okay? Anytime you're using the excuse, I have too much going on. Gotcha. Okay. And the next one, I think we're on number 6 here. Next limiting belief, fear. Seems scary, right? So fear is an emotional and then chemical reaction or response, caused by our sympathetic nervous system detecting either a real or imagined danger. So I think we all know what fear is, right? Really what fear is just a response of our bodies. It's an emotion that then creates a chemical trigger that makes our body feel a certain way. But fear is never an actual indication of danger in many cases. Yes, there was a period of time where we were cavemen, right, in our ancestors. And, we would see like a saber-toothed tiger out in the distance and we would get scared and we would, the fight or flight autonomic nervous system, sympathetic nervous system, pops in and tells us to run away or to fight the animal, right? That's like a real danger, right? And there are some cases, very few cases really, where we feel fear in regards to an actual dangerous situation in front of us. But most of the time when we're looking at our planners and we're afraid to work on a task or a project, this is an imagined fear, right? This is fear caused by a stress response in our brains. It's not a real fear. Our lives are not actually in danger, but our brains don't know that, right? Anytime we detect some sort of fear in some way or another, our brains react with the same response, right? So fear, it's not a real thing. It's usually just something in our heads that makes us feel a certain way, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be taking action, right? So this may resonate with you if you use the excuse, I'm afraid to do that, right? Like, I'm afraid to go for that promotion. I'm afraid to start my own business, right? I'm afraid to publish this book I've been working on for many years that could be the next great American novel. I'm afraid, right? Fear isn't a real thing, though. It's just a response in our bodies. And unless there is a danger, which none of those situations put you into mortal danger, let me remind you that, then it really is just a feeling that we're getting that we do not have to let control our behavior. So try this affirmation if you struggle with fear. I feel the fear and I choose to do it anyway, because that's the only response you can really do logically when it comes to fear of something that's irrational or just not tangible. It's not an immediate mortal danger that you're in, right? And I'll tell you this, our brains are very interesting machines. Anything we do that's new will trigger a fear response. So if you're going after a goal you've never gone after before, or maybe it's a goal you've gone after many times before, you keep failing, it's going to trigger, your brain is going to trigger a fear response because it triggers a fear response to anything that's unknown. Anything that's unknown is a danger to your brain. So the best thing to do if you're struggling with fear as a limiting belief is, I feel the fear and choose to do it anyway. And do it, just sit in the fear. Get used to being uncomfortable, right? With that fear for a little bit and do it anyway. Fear is just your body's reaction to something. It doesn't mean that you have to react a certain way. It doesn't mean you don't do the thing that's on your to-do list just because you're fearful. You can still choose to feel the fear and do it anyway. Okay, now, seventh and final limiting belief is apathy. Apathy is a lack of interest, enthusiasm, or concern that is often the mental aspect of laziness or a lack of self-discipline. Okay, so you might be someone who's struggling with apathy if you use the excuse, I don't feel like doing that, right? So a lot of times I think we put things in our planner, we say we're going to do something, we say there's a habit we're trying to instill, and when time comes for us to actually work on it, we're like, oh, I don't feel like doing that right now, right? We become apathetic about it, right? It's because we've forgotten why we wanted to do that thing to begin with, right? Why we set that goal, why we chose that objective, why we broke down that project, why we said this habit was important to us enough that we wanted to change it, right? So if you're feeling apathetic, it's usually a sign that, I hate to say laziness, but it's really a lack of self-discipline, right? Now, what you can say to yourself in that moment where you're using that excuse, I don't feel like doing this, try this affirmation. I take action on the things that are important to me. So always remind yourself of that. You're like, oh, I don't feel like going and, working out today. Well, remind yourself, I take action on the things that are important to me. Is that working out important to me? Is the goal that working out is tied to important to me? If it is, hopefully that'll be enough to start rewriting that negative belief and start actually taking action. So that was the seventh and final limiting belief. I hope that this video has been informative and entertaining and eye-opening, and I hope that you can use the affirmations that I suggested to help you to overcome any of the limiting beliefs that actually apply to you. I, of course, want to know which limiting beliefs do apply to you, so please leave me a comment down below in the description and let me know all about that. And don't be surprised if you actually have more than one limiting belief. It's very common. Maybe you have none of these. Maybe you have one. Maybe you have all of them, right? And that's fine, absolutely fine. The most important thing about personal development and working on our mindset and working towards success is identifying the things that are holding us back and doing the work to overcome them so we can get things done. Now, before we say goodbye, I wanted to give you guys a quick reminder that if you're interested in personal development and productivity, I have another free live workshop coming up next Saturday, May 22nd at 11 a.m. Eastern Time called the Productivity Assessment. I've been essentially putting together a dedicated test to help us to identify the areas of productivity and planning and time management that we struggle with so we can identify them and, of course, work on any issues that are holding us back from being our most productive, most successful selves. So I would love for you to join me next week. This is live and free on YouTube. If you're on my email list, you're going to get emailed the link in the morning as a little reminder. So you have a direct link to join me for the assessment live. And I think it's going to be a really great time. I actually did this already, this assessment, with my productivity and planning mastermind membership, and they absolutely loved it. They said that this was so valuable in helping them specifically identify the productivity issues that they've been having, so they know exactly what they need to work on to become, their best selves and to do their own personal development in the areas of time management. So I hope that you will be able to join me as well. And so, yes, I hope to see you live next Saturday. So thank you so much for joining me for today's video. As I already mentioned, if you want more of the behind the scenes of my productivity life and business, make sure you're following me on Instagram. Feel free to go check out my shop, thecharmedshop.com, to get my latest and greatest tools, classes, courses, and more. Of course, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you're not yet subscribed to my channel, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button for more awesome videos by me. And until next time, bye-bye.